All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the House Judiciary Committee for 2011. Glad to see the group here today. We've got a full house, it looks like, and we're going to get started with our business. The first thing we'll have is Ms. Shockley will do a roll call for us. Get everybody lined up? You got them all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've got some two new members on our committee this year, and I think what we might do, as I have in the past, we're going to start out with a little introduction of everyone so that we know who all the players are. And I'd like to first introduce our staff to you. We have a new secretary assistant this year, my assistant, Charla Shockley. And Charla is back here if you haven't met her yet. She is doing an outstanding job for us. We also have Brandy Bazemore, who will be the committee aide as an attorney, working with Legislative Services. She'll be sitting on my left. Catherine Lottie, where's Catherine? Over here at the far right of my far right, your left, and she is also our attorney for the committee during the session. Michael O'Connor is our aide. Michael works primarily with me, and then we, of course, have Jill Travis, our legislative counsel, and our intern back over here. I lost your name.
Jeff.
Again?
Jeff
Folson.
Jeff Folson?
Tolson, excuse me. Jeff is from Georgia Southern. Right? No? Dang. Keep trying. Got something to talk and get acquainted with Jeff. All right, and then we got members of our committee. I'm going to ask for the committee members. I think it's helpful to, as we go around the room so everyone is acquainted. And I'm going to start with friend Mr. Nix over here. If you will first introduce yourself, and you're on microphone number
15.
There we go.
You got me.
If you would tell us a little bit about yourself and where you hail from, Mr. Nix.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm just hoping you know as little about me as you do about the aide, so I can probably hide out. Now, this will be my second year on the committee. I represent District 69, which is parts of Troop, Heard, and Carroll counties, and I am a non-attorney.
I remember when Mr. Nix came on the committee, I thought he felt he was being punished for something.
And I'm back again, so whatever I did it again.
Okay.
Thank you.
And our next member.
Yes, I'm State Representative Ellie Dobbs. I'm District 53, which is west and northwest Atlanta, all in Fulton County.
And she is a member of the bar and background in health services, right? Hospitals.
That's correct.
And next we got Mr. Crawford.
Rick Crawford, House District 16, Cedartown.
He practices law in Cedartown?
Cedartown.
Right. And next we have
Mary Margaret Oliver, Decatur, Georgia.
And where?
Decatur, Georgia.
All right. General practice in many fields. Next.
Billy Maddox, represent District 127, which is Pike, Upson, and part of Lamar County. This will be my fourth year on the Judiciary Committee. Been practicing law, actually going into my fifth year. Had a couple of different careers in banking and different things before I went back to law school. But looking forward to working with you this year, Mr. Chairman.
That's Chairman Maddox. And next we have Chairman Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Jacobs, District 80, DeKalb County, Brookhaven. My practice is primarily commercial litigation and bankruptcy work. 7th year in the General Assembly and 7th year on one or the other Judiciary Committee.
And next to my left you have our majority floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lindsay. I represent Atlanta and Sandy Springs. Been on this committee now. This is my fourth term on this committee, and I do civil litigation in Atlanta.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Republican.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my name is Doug McKillop from Athens. I think it's my third year on the committee, my fifth year in the House of Representatives. My law practice is slowly failing as I spend that time here, and I'm very, very happy to have Brandy here because she was my first child's babysitter for the first 4 years of his life, and couldn't have done any better than Brandy. So, thank you. Happy to be here.
Good move. Next.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Stephen Allison. I'm a practicing attorney up in Blairsville. I've been practicing up there for 14 years. I just have a small country law practice, and I starve when I'm down here. So thank you.
And Mr. Stevens is also the secretary of the committee, as cute as they come. Next we have.
Thank you very much. I'm flattered.
Next we have. There's a face I don't even know yet.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Stacey Evans from House District 40, which is Smyrna and Marietta. I took Rod Tollay's place in the House, and I think the last time I came in this committee, he was sitting in this chair, so I think I'm literally taking his seat. And I practice at Bryan Cave, formerly Powell Goldstein.
Very good. Glad to have you with us. Next.
I'm Roger Bruce. I represent District 64, Fulton County, Douglas County, parts of the city of Atlanta. I've been on this committee for 8 years. I'm a non-attorney. And I want to know whether or not 8 years qualifies me to get a degree. That means I've been on this committee longer than y'all been in law school.
Maybe an associate degree. How's that? You got to stand the bar first, though. Got all these qualifications.
I can do that.
And
Mr. Chairman, my name is Andy Welch. I'm taking John Lunsford's seat from the 110th District, which represents portions of Henry, Newton, and Butts counties. I practiced with my father in the law firm of Smith, Welch, and Britton out of McDonough, Georgia.
I'm glad to have you with us, too, Mr. Welch. And I think I introduced Jill Travis to you. Jill's been with us for many, many good years, and she's the one that keeps us in line with our drafting of bills and amendments. So happy to have you with us again this year, Ms. Travis. We've got 2 items we're really going to talk about. I just wanted to have a discussion about these because both of them are my bills, but I'll give you a little background. The evidence bill number 1, which is House Bill 24 again. This is a bill that last year, it's actually been in this committee 2 different times for 2 years. The first year it passed out of the committee, did not pass out of rules. That was in 2009. It is a bill that was a result of a committee that was set up in 2008 that went through and took the Georgia Bar proposal of a bill that came out of a committee from the State Bar. Do we have anybody here from the State Bar today? I didn't. Not anybody as far as, yeah, okay. So Rusty Sewell is here on behalf of the bar, but we had a committee that did a very thorough work as far as the State Bar. They brought it to us. We then started on it. If you members remember this, back in 2008, beginning about June, and worked on it through November on every Thursday afternoon from 2 to 4 to 5, and really went through piece by piece. We did not only the evidence part of it, we decided to do a recodification of everything that dealt with evidence and admission of evidence in the law and put it under one chapter. So what we've done is, by recodifying, is taking the existing provisions that were not what we call the model rule of evidence, but other portions of the law dealing with evidence, arrange that into what will be a part of Title 24, so everything can be within one title that deals with what we perceive to be matters of admission of testimony or documents in court. So with that completed, we started on the process in 2009. As I mentioned, it came through Judiciary. It was not out of rules that year. In 2010, we again started the process from here, made a few tweaks to it. It went out of Judiciary Committee into rules, out of rules to the floor. It was debated on the floor and passed unanimously, a large vote, I should not unanimously, excuse me, by a large vote, and went to the Senate. It was delayed in the Senate. In the last few days, it passed out of the Senate's Judiciary Committee, but was not passed out of the rules. So the bill died, of course, with the end of the 2010 2010 session. We've come back this year. We've had it re-identified as, again, House Bill 24. And this is the first meeting about it. And thus far, I think we've got good support. I've had a few comments come in recently. I know we've had some people with the Superior Court clerks who raised several issues. And there may be others here who would like to talk today about the bill. This is all we're going to be doing is having a discussion on the bill. So with that in mind, if there's anyone who would like, first of all, in the audience, to address the committee on the evidence bill, House Bill 24, I invite you at this time to come forward and do so. And while we're doing that, I notice we have with us a representative of our judiciary. If Judge Alton Stevens will please stand up and be recognized from the Athens, what we call the Western Circuit. I never knew why it was called the Western Circuit. The Wild West. Glad to have you with us today. Any other judiciary with us today? I saw Doug McKellar leading the standing ovation for him. Any other judiciary? I know I've got Brian back here with the solicitor's office. Glad to have you with us. Anyone else? Conversations with individuals on the House, not the House side, the Senate side, and they seem to be prepared and waiting for the bill to come over there. So hopefully it's going to get a good hearing there, and I expect optimistically it will pass. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. I think it's a good product. It's been well worked, and I think we just had recently the state of Illinois adopted the model rules of evidence. And I think it's strange because if you go back historically, it's like a full circle. Illinois was one of the first states back in I believe the 40s to adopt what were to be considered the birth of the model rules, although not in the same format as today's rules. And then the next state was the state of California, and they sort of massaged it a little more, and that became what is considered the model rules of evidence. So now we're back around with Illinois accepting what is the model rules, and that is the 44th state. So with everyone's understanding, we'll probably plan to have this on the calendar for next Tuesday as a bill for consideration at that time. We have also before us a bill that I have put my name to, but I'm certainly not the author to it. I want to recognize, before we begin on House Bill 30, we have former House Representative Kevin Levitas with us. Mr. Levitas, if you'll stand and so everyone can see you, I may have you come forward and talk about this because it's interesting to everyone. Why are we doing the restrictive covenants on employment contracts again? Well, history behind this is Representative Levitas back in 2009 put together the proposal and the project to bring Georgia into a time frame where we were having specific rules of law dealing with restrictive employment contracts. And the history behind that has been we had a law passed back, I believe, in 1989, if I remember time-wise, which was an attempt to do the very thing that this bill does. That came up before the state Supreme Court on a matter of question of the constitutionality of the law that was passed in 1989. The Supreme Court recognized that we do have a provision in our state constitution which provides for almost unrestricted ability of persons' right to work. We call it the right to work clause in the Georgia Constitution. And because of the provision in our Constitution, the Supreme Court felt we did not have the ability to enter into statutory limitations as was attempted in 1989. So they struck down the law. Nothing happened between then until 2009, but we've had a history in the past in Georgia that the courts have acknowledged that there is the right for parties to enter into a contract which provides for restrictions of employment, but the difficulty has been every time a case comes up before either the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, there's nuances and changes made, so it's really been like a mercurial project where you can't really say this is what the law is today because another case may come out changing those provisions. With that said, Mr. Levitas proposed the legislation as well as a constitutional amendment which would have to go on the ballot in 2010 for a vote. They were both brought in. They were reviewed in this committee. We did some substantial work on the bill itself, and we decided it was good to go ahead and pass the bill in 2009 as a means of allowing all the public as well as the business community and the bar to review what we were suggesting as legislation in this area, and the fact that it would have to have the constitutional amendment passed to become law, but went ahead and passed the statutory provisions. So after it was passed, the constitutional amendment was put on the ballot in 2010. It also passed. And you think, well, that should be the end of it. It wasn't exactly, because the language we had in both bills as far as the enacting provisions conflicted. The bill that was passed in 2009 addressed the bill itself. The statute would become law upon the approval of the constitutional amendment by the voters. I forgot the exact language, we'll get to it in a minute. And our constitutional amendment did not have a provision stating when it would become effective. Therefore, by other provision of our state constitution, the amendment was to become effective on January 1st. So we're in a, if I say catch-22, we had a statutory law provision that was now already made effective because of the language within the statute said it will become effective upon a certain date, and that date certain was November the 3rd when it was having been passed as a constitutional amendment, but we did not have supporting constitutional language to allow for it. And the constitutional language did not become effective until January 1. And you think, well, okay, so we have to wait a couple of months before it becomes effective. Well, in doing further research into case law and statutory provisions about what our appellate courts have said, when they address this type of problem, they said once a statute becomes valid, the date of its enactment, if there is not supporting constitutional provision, it is void and is void ab initio, and it cannot be even revised by amendment. So with that staring us in the face, it was felt the best course of action was to take the bill again, proceed as a bill to be enacted under the now existing constitutional language, take the same bill and hopefully have it passed. And I think it will be passed. And I think we've had some people raise concerns about it, but I think the General Assembly, from the votes that we had both in the House and the Senate last 2 years on this issue, are supportive of the measure. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Levitas to us, and glad to have you back with us now, Citizen Levitas. And,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tell us what your thoughts are about this particular
I think
bill.
that pretty much concludes my testimony. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think you really have done an excellent job of summarizing where we are and where we've come from. And again, I always do it, but I want to thank again the members of this committee who really substantially reworked that bill and made it a very balanced bill. And I think that is the reason that that bill and the constitutional amendment passed, was the hard work of this committee. So I thank all of you for your work. And where we are is that there is a question now as to whether or not the statute that we passed, House Bill 173, would remain effective in light of the enactment date and the fact that the constitutional amendment did not go in until 2011, January 1. I'm not sure that it couldn't withstand a challenge, but the point is that we don't want to have that situation. This would provide clarity. To pass the same bill out would, as of the date of the signature of the governor, would remove all questions. You would have the constitutional amendment already in place. You would have the language of the statute, and there would be no question. Unfortunately, there's going to be gray area that can't be resolved for those contracts that were signed either between November 3rd, 2010 and December 31st, 2010, and possibly even those contracts that have been signed since January 1st of this year. And I appreciate the chairman's willingness to reconsider this and pass it on, but essentially if we pass the same bill, it would remove once and for all any questions regarding the enactment of the statute and what the law of Georgia is.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions of Citizen Levitas?
I think they're just glad I'm Citizen Levitas.
You see, Mr. McKillop has his light on.
I knew that was too easy, Mr. Chairman.
Remember, everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Remember, you're no longer immune for things that you say here, so just be aware. Is this exactly the same? That is, has there been any change whatsoever?
There was, I think, one slight change, but it has nothing to do with the substance of it. You have to defer to council on this. Actually, council was nice enough to give me a comparison between last year's bill and this year's bill in a word comparison document, and it is almost verbatim the same. I forget, there was one minor change, but I can't answer that right now. I think I'd have to defer.
I'm going to get Ms. Travis a minute to address that very point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Pleased to have you with us. Anyone else wish to address the committee on House Bill 30? And if not, I'm going to ask Ms. Travis if she would pull her mic around for us, and I want to speak to you. You got a mic there where you can get to? We had you draft up the what is now House Bill 30. I did, and there were a couple of, first of all, I think you would call them tweaking as far as grammatical changes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you tell us what those were?
I could if I brought that computer document with me or had a computer, but
Okay.
so I'll just do best I can from memory. I can tell you for sure that all of Section 1 is new. Section 1 is explaining actually what y'all are doing and why you're doing it. With respect to the body of the bill itself, I can give you some for examples of what we changed. If you turn to page 3, line 70, you see trade secret as that term is defined in Code Section 3-1-761. And in the version that was passed in 2009, it made a reference to the article as the term is defined in Article 3 of Chapter 8. It was or Chapter 1. It was not as precise. So that kind of stuff was done. There were a few times in the bill where you'll see that the words products or services is the defined term, but then when you look through the body of the bill, sometimes it says products and services. And so because we've got it as a defined term, we wanted to be consistent.
This is in this bill
so,
now.
those kinds of things, there was a couple of comments, but that was the gist of it.
Nothing that you would call substantive changes?
No, not at all.
Now there has been brought to my attention, Mr. McKillop, one area that had what we may call a substantive change. And I say substantive because it was a wording change, but if you go over to page 9, under section 13.856, beginning on line 289, there was a provision. I'm suggesting this would come up in the committee when we have the hearing on it. There's language, you read this, in determining the reasons of a restrictive covenant that limits or restricts competition during the course of an employment or business relationship, the court shall make the following presumptions. That was limiting language that would apply only during the course of the employment. It was recognized that this whole language also applies not only just to term of employment, but also after employment. So what we're suggesting may be a amendment to the clause, and I'll read this to you in full so you'll understand this. In determining the reasonableness of a restrictive covenant that limits or restricts competition during the course of an employment or business relationship, new language, and in determining the reasonableness of a restrictive covenant sought to be enforced after a term of employment, the court shall make the following presumptions. So not only during the employment time, we felt the appropriateness with this was to be also after employment, and so we're suggesting that may be an addition to be considered when we have the bill up for review. That is the only changes. And with that said, is there anyone else who would like to? Yes, sir, Mr. Hatfield.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Is there a specific provision in here repealing the prior bill from 2009?
What was that, Ms. Travis? Is there language reckoning? Of course, it was declared unconstitutional, but there also probably could be a repealing section.
Section 3 and section, it's on line 42.
Ah, yes. 3 and 4. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? I will expect we may want to consider this one also next Tuesday. We have a full committee hearing. Let me do some more further housekeeping measures while we're all together. We have within your packet a copy of the Judiciary Civil Committee rules on your left side. There's only been one change, nothing of a substantive change, but the question has come up from time to time as to the persons who serve ex officio on subcommittees or the committee, as to the voting ability of those persons. I want to clarify that where it says under 3, the last paragraph, the chairman of the committee and a subcommittee shall serve as ex officio of any subcommittee and may vote as other members of the subcommittee. So that's the only thing that we're clearing the language there, clarifying it rather. You will also note on your right side we have 2 subcommittees that are set up. Subcommittee 1 is the Lane Subcommittee, and that will be chaired by Representative Roger Lane. Members will be Stephen Allison, Rick Crawford, Mark Hatfield, Billy Maddox, Doug McKillop, Mary Margaret Oliver, Pam Stevens, and Randy Nix. And to that, I will also be serving as ex officio, as will Mike Jacobs. Mike Jacobs is the chair of the Subcommittee 2. He chairs that with Roger Bruce, Ellie Dobbs, Stacy Evans, Edward Lindsay, Larry O'Neill, Jay Powell, Andy Welch, and Tom Weldon as members. So that makes up your subcommittee. I'll ask as to the, going back to the rules, the committee rules, do we have any questions about the rules? And I do see lights on, number 7.
Just at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, for a motion.
For a motion. Okay, number 12, Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive me for not remembering this. Most of the quorum rules set a majority of the number of the committee members, and I just don't remember how long, whether this committee had deviated from the majority of the committee members at what point in the past. I apologize for not remembering that. Was it 5 last year?
We did have 5. I thought it stated in here, is it not?
It says right here.
Yeah, okay, the first item, the quorum of judiciary shall be 5 members.
It was 5 last year.
It was 5 last year.
Okay, at some point in the past we deviated from having a majority of the committee members.
As going back as far as I can recall that I've chaired, it's been 5 members.
Okay.
It may be prior to that time, but I know in the past we did have some difficulty, years past, trying to have a majority of a committee, the committee president, in order to conduct business, and we dropped it down as a means of being sure we had a quorum capable of going and considering bills.
The committee size has grown, I think, a good bit in the last few years, and that's why it came to my attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. If there's no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion as to the adoption of the rules.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Do we have any further discussion on the rules? Any proposed amendments? There being none, the chair will call for the question. All in favor of the statement of the rules for the committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Do we have anything else to come before the committee today? Mr. Jacobs?
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to announce a subcommittee meeting. My subcommittee will meet tomorrow in here at 1 p.m. to take up Chief's Law, which is Tommy Benton's, Representative Benton's antifreeze proposition, and the Uniform Interstate Depositions and Discovery Act, which has been before this committee before. So that's tomorrow in here at 1 p.m.